All right, we're live. Hi, this is Rona, and I've got Langley Shazor with me. Hope y'all are
Hey,
doing good. How are you, Langley?
I am fantastic. How are you? And thank you again for having me.
Oh, it's always my pleasure, darling. My goodness. Thank you for being here. I'm doing pretty good. Pretty good.
Good, good. I know we're talking offline a little bit about some of the things that are getting ready to transition in your life. So I'm
Mm,
excited to see how all that transpires and you getting more control over your well being and your health.
yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I knocked out another goal last night, and it was a hard one for me because I had to go to Kingsport, and I know it seems like nothing to somebody your age and everything, but Lord, with my health the way it is now, I had to take a nap yesterday afternoon, and but I planned and I did it, and I was so thankful. I prayed all the way because the traffic was terrible, but it's a good sign that things are opened up again. You know,
Absolutely.
on the one hand, I'm not used to driving in all that traffic, but on the other hand, I was thankful to see the it means people are back to work and getting out, and at the restaurants when I was coming back you could see people because it was like after 7 when I come back, and Lord, but I prayed the whole time when I was driving.
Sometimes you have to.
Ooh, Lordy, yeah, this one motorcycle, and that was just so rude. This motorcycle got right on my left side, right up against me, and his headlight was in my left mirror. Now, there was no use in that. That was just rude. And he finally, I thought, Lord, you never know these days. I was praying he wasn't going to pull up beside him and shoot me, you
Oh,
know?
and those are unfortunately things that we have to be thinking about now.
Yeah. And finally, I was so relieved. I thought, oh gosh, he's pulling around me. But it was a turn lane and he turned off. Thank the
At least
Lord.
nothing happened. Though. That's a good thing. It's
Yeah.
uneventful.
Yeah, I didn't have to bump him off with my car. No, I'm kidding. I wouldn't.
But I
Unless I
mean,
saw it.
it's
Yeah.
sometimes we get put in those situations. You have to react.
Yeah, if I
Uh,
saw a gun raising up, you betcha I'd bump him off with my car. But I'm
yeah.
not a violent person,
Well,
of
I'd say in your
course.
career, I mean, you've seen enough violence for several
Oh yeah,
lifetimes.
yeah, and it's made me so suspect, and but it's gave me a given me a good wariness of people too. Because yeah, I've seen a lot. Even though I wasn't a police officer, I was too chicken to be a police officer. But they see everything. But
Hmm.
yeah, yeah, we like you're saying we talked beforehand about bullying
Yeah,
and uh, and how we're not we shouldn't allow that. We shouldn't allow ourselves to be bullied like I did in my marriage, 12.5 years. Everything I liked and all my hobbies were just bullied, and so much I was just bullied so much about it, I just gave up everything. So you should never allow that to happen.
no, and I think you bring up something interesting that many of us don't think about. You were talking about how your interest and the things that you like, your hobbies, and you kind of just put them away, or just stopped having those interests. And I think that that's a form of bullying that we don't think as much about, and I think that's something that we don't talk enough about. Um, and that is that sometimes
Trying to get
you're being bullied. Oh, I see
I
you.
got
Sometimes
that's it.
you're being bullied, and it's not as overt as a lot of people think. We most of the time classify bullying as physical violence or verbal violence. Yeah, and even cyber bullying. Now we see people being rude and condescending and through computers, but I think we miss some of the more subversive things.
Mm,
Like you said, someone just impressing upon you their interest to a point where you no longer have any is
yeah,
also a form of bullying.
it sure was. It just wasn't worth it. He put everything I liked. He put it down so much. It just wasn't worth the effort for me to even try. I loved house plants and just different things, but everything he just made fun of me so much, which was a form of bullying. It became so awful, and then the physical started. But yeah, it made it so it just wasn't worth it, and I
You
just
lose
kept my head
yourself.
down.
Yeah,
Mm,
you lose yourself. That's what I was going to say.
yeah.
I've been there too, and I think it's important to note that it hasn't just been in romantic relationships where I have felt that kind of pressure.
Mm,
I've seen that on the job. I've seen that with friends who were, and I don't know that it was out of malice, but I think I would still classify it as a form of bullying because it was the lack of support
hmm.
from them that made me question whether or not it was worth doing. And in some cases, I would maybe quit doing something because I wasn't getting any support from the people that I held in the highest regard at that time.
I understand that. Without support, support means a lot.
Hmm.
And I have my mama, and she supports me, and of course the Lord always supports you. But I back then, of course, Mama didn't know what was going on. It was too shameful for me. That's the way they put you when you're in an abusive marriage. That's just the way it works. You're so ashamed to let anybody know what's
Hmm.
going on. They knew something was wrong, but I just couldn't tell them.
Well, and I think that's, we were talking offline, and I was talking about being in alternative education in middle
Hmm.
school, which
Yeah.
I think is kind of like the golden age of bullying, if there is such a thing. But I think that's a lot of what those kids experienced, was that it was shameful, and they didn't want to admit they were being bullied, and they didn't want to show weakness. They were intimidated to the point where they didn't want to even let the staff know what was going on for fear of retribution.
Yeah. Oh, I understand that. Fear was a big part of my marriage. Yeah. And I can't imagine it in the children. Lord have mercy. I had such good in junior high back then. It was junior high for me, and I had a wonderful junior high experience, and high school's different, but that's another story. But anyway, yeah, be a teacher nowadays and see the bullying, you were talking about the limitations of how
Yeah,
you all could handle it.
right. And that makes it so much more difficult because uh, it's cliche, but it's the best way to put it is, our hands were literally tied by legislation,
Hmm.
and by certain obligations that we had, whether it be from, human services or education. There was only so much that could be done. And I know that a lot of parents were really frustrated. I was frustrated as an educator. And I know that a lot of the people that I worked with, I know that our principal and assistant principal were frustrated because there were times where we really needed to take a more stern position, but were unable to. And
Hmm.
I think that's a hard position to be in. We talk a lot about, in various circles and things I see in the news. We talk a lot about at what point does the government have too much control?
Mm.
And you see that when we rely on them too much, and they have too much influence on certain social aspects, you begin to run into these roadblocks where you can't do as much as you would like, whether it be disciplinary, or something encouraging for a child. You're kind of in this middle ground that makes it very difficult to navigate and help these children become the best versions of themselves at that point in their lives.
And I bet you heard from parents too that the children that were bullied, and why couldn't you do more and this and that.
All the time,
Mm.
all the time. I mean, and I mean, you'd see it on social media, and not that I agree that's the best platform, but sometimes you've got to
Mm.
just get that out, and awareness is key.
Yeah.
Awareness is key, and I don't always agree with the way that people make situations aware. to other
Mm-hmm.
individuals. However, I understand the frustration that, you're just trying to look out for your child. You're trying to be a parent, and a parent's role is protect their children. And when you turn that child over to another entity or school, you expect that child to be taken care of and protected in that regard as well. So I definitely understand how frustrating that can be. Um,
Yeah.
and I guess the next thing is, what do you think? And I was thinking about this even when we talked about having this topic today. I don't say I don't know, but it's so multifaceted, and it's so complex, how to address bullying, because so often we want to address the symptom, which needs to be addressed. We need to keep these kids protected and keep them from being bullied, but then there's the actual solution, and that's the root cause analysis of what's causing a child to become a bully.
Mm-hmm. Or they treated, how they're treated at home.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a big factor. When I was in elementary school, of course, all the school, it was just a different age. They allowed paddling. I even got paddling in the second grade, and it was for not, I was paying attention to, I'll never forget this. His name was Mike Newton, and I had a crush on him, and it was second grade. And we used to have those cloth, well, you don't know what I'm talking about, but these blue cloth covered 3-ring notebooks, and he was pulling the string and unraveling it during her reading of the Bible verse. We would have a Bible reading, in our class to start it off. And because I was paying attention to him instead of her, the teacher, she paddled me. But times have changed. But,
They have. And that's
get,
another great point.
yeah, government is too much. We're supposed to tell the government what to do. It's
Hmm.
just got way turned over.
Well,
Um,
it's so, because we are such a melting pot of cultures. It is always sensitive to talk about like the separation of church and state, and
mm,
taking the Ten Commandments off of the courthouses, and
eh,
taking prayer out of schools,
mm,
I think that I think a lot of people have the wrong impression, and what I mean by that is, I think when we talk about having prayer in school, and we talk about having those spiritual, faith-based learning curriculum portions, is not that anyone is trying to impress upon someone their belief system. But I do recognize that we aren't practicing um, being inclusive.
mm,
So I see why people would feel that way.
mhm,
Even as a practitioner of the Christian belief system and faith system, it's not my place to tell someone what to choose and what they believe. It's not my place to tell them how to do that. It is my place to show them the love of Christ through my actions, and through my interactions with them, because that's what we've been charged to do.
mhm.
But I think we often like to, get an inch and take a mile. And, I think that's what people are afraid of, is this indoctrination of, you have to adhere to my religious practice or else. And so, to that degree, I would have to agree that if we're not going to be inclusive in particular people's religious systems, then it is practical to not have it in a school, if you're not going to allow people of other faiths to practice their faith as well.
See that back when I was in elementary school, you just didn't hear that. We had Pledge of Allegiance when we
Mhm.
first started class. We all stood up, put our hand over the heart, faced the flag, and said Pledge Allegiance. And then we had she read the Bible verse, the teacher did, and then before we went to eat, which then it was downstairs in the dungeon in Weaver School. It's not there anymore, but we would stand up and thank God for our food, and all this other stuff just wasn't even heard of back then. So times have just changed,
They have.
and I understand about wanting to include everybody, just not trying not to impose stuff on people.
Hmm. It's delicate balance,
Yeah.
because we do have the right to religious freedom.
Yeah. You
And
bet.
while we still tell everybody that you can't practice your religion, so
Uh,
talk another form of bullying, right?
yeah.
And it kind of goes back to what we were saying about governance and how people in authority, do commit that for
Mm.
that crime of bullying on a much larger scale than what we experience. But you can see the trickle down effect.
Oh,
And
yeah.
when you see that there's parents who bully their own children. I think
Yeah.
there was a particular a circumstance where we had basically an all-out war, if you will, for lack of a better way to put that, between two sets of complexes. So what we found out, why it was ramping up and the violence was ramping up um, in school, was because these kids were coming home and their parents were making them go out here and fight these other kids.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
And the parents were instigating this.
Shaming them to do it,
This,
probably.
yeah, yeah. And so the kids were being bullied at home by their parents,
Mm.
uh, to go out here and to do these things. And then we're having to, obviously, you take that animosity, you take that rage, you take that shame, and you bring it into a classroom, a confined setting, and you see the explosiveness in these kids day in and day out.
Yeah. That's a shame, honey. You never know what somebody's going through.
You don't, and that's the one thing that I think we say, but we don't apply as often as we should. Is that we recognize that everybody's going, and some people don't. So let me say that first. Some people don't care that people are going through stuff.
No,
But
they
by
really
and
don't.
large, yeah, I mean, I know some people, and I've experienced people who don't care, and
Mm.
that's unfortunate. But that's between them and God,
Yeah.
um, or
Yeah,
whatever they
exactly.
believe. But we definitely don't apply that in terms of how we think about each other. Is that you are a human being, and we know that all have fallen short, which means everyone's going through something. Everyone's got something going on. We always apply that verse in terms of um, committed sins, right? But really, what it means is that we fall short because we're being tested, we're being pushed, we're being pulled, we're being flattened. All these things are happening to us, and which is to grow our faith, because we
Mm.
have to have our faith tested in order for it to grow.
Hmm.
The only way to be tested is to go through things, and you're not always going to get it right. You're not always going to come out on top. You're not always going to come out victorious in that
Hmm.
moment. Now we know that victory is the end,
Oh, yes.
but we know that all things work together for the good of those that love Him and are called according to His purpose. Doesn't mean that everything's going to be good. We talked about that last night, Anthony and I, and I think that we know these things, but then we see people and we pass judgment, and we see people and we make assumptions, and we read a
Yeah,
book, a book by its cover kind of analogy, not realizing that everybody has something going on.
that's true. I found a memory on my Facebook this morning, um, and it was in June of 2015, and May was when I had my nervous breakdown, and I just wrote, "Jesus, take the wheel," and He did, and I'm here alive today, with my testimony, and I can help and hopefully help other people that's gone through it or going through it. So He did take the wheel, and He helped me, and I'm here and alive, and I'm thankful.
Well, I'm thankful for your heart and the things that you want to do, because someone in your position who has seen what they have seen working in the police department, uh,
Mm,
I think if anyone can see that everyone's going through something, it would have been a person in your position.
mm,
Your first responders, your law enforcement, people who work directly with law enforcement like yourself. You all really are on the front lines of that. Everyone's got something going on battle.
mm-hmm.
Because a lot of us don't know how to deal with adversity. And that's what you get with some of these violent outbursts and suicides. And the adversity comes, and they are unequipped to be able to deal with it. And it's no fault of their own. It's actually
No,
our fault for not helping them be more equipped and be more mentally stable, and help them and recognize
yeah,
the signs, because we recognize that everybody's going through something.
Yeah, but we can't always recognize it, honey. They
We
hide it.
we can't,
Yes,
and it is difficult. Um, it is difficult,
yeah,
but
this is
I think that
suicides.
I think a lot of that is still based in the bullying that we're talking about.
Yeah, that's
A
true.
lot of that is if we were treating each other as we have been called to treat each other, love your neighbor as you love yourself. Well,
Hmm.
I don't want to digress, but that kind of
That's
makes the whole
okay.
point. You know, if you don't love yourself, how can you love someone else? And so you see that cycle of bullying because these people have something missing, and they fill it with their outward projections. And so going back to my previous point, if we were able to love each other the way that we have been called to do, you would see less of that because we would be caring about people on the front end and not trying to figure out what's wrong with them on the back end.
Yeah, that's true. I understand what you're talking about. Yeah, if only we had that superpower. Sometimes we do. Um, sometimes I can, like, I think I've told you before, I can just feel people's energy.
Mhm.
And boy, I was hit with a lot of it at the police department.
Uh,
That's probably what led to,
yeah, that's going to say it's probably overwhelming.
yeah, it was. And I didn't understand that. Um, I don't know if I told you or not. I'm digressing a little bit here, but I had a chance in 2000 to go to Oklahoma City for a class in computers. But anyway, while we were there, we visited the Oklahoma City bombing site.
Mhm.
And I walked among the chairs. They have granite chairs, big chairs for every adult victim. And which, Lord, it was just heartbreaking. And then there was little chairs for each of the children. They had that daycare
Mhm.
there, and they had teddy bears and things. And as I walked around it, the air was vibrating to me. I could feel such strong vibrations in that air as I was walking amongst those chairs. And they have one corner of the building still up, and the rest of it, is open. And the survivor tree is still there, and what they'd written on the wall about help and stuff. That was really uh, almost overwhelming. It was so many vibrations in the air, and I just wonder if other people feel that.
I think you have the ability. We talk about listening, we talk about tapping in, and because everything is energy and it's neither destroyed nor created, it's simply transferred. So, everyone has the ability to feel that energy and those vibrations. It's just a matter of being open enough to receive them.
Mm. Well, I've always, been sensitive to a fault. And people have told me that you're just too sensitive. Well, that's just me. And I understand that now, that that's just the way I've always been. And I embrace that. And I know it for what it is. And I meditate now
Hmm.
and try to tap into a higher frequency of energy like you're talking about. Because I agree that everything is energy.
And it's such a unique experience um, because there's a book called The Empath Survival Guide that I had to buy, and I read it because I was having the same type of experiences where I was absorbing energy and talking to people and helping their problems and trying to coach, and I wasn't deflecting or shedding enough of that energy at the end of those interactions, and so it was becoming, an emotional overload to take all that on. And so I had to learn tools and techniques to keep myself protected so that I could continue to be efficient with and proficient with my ability to help people. Instead of just becoming a recluse and running away and hiding. Um,
Hmm.
because we've all been called to give and to serve, and that's what everybody's purpose is. But you have to know how, and you have to know how to keep yourself protected, and you have to know how to say no. You have to know when to rest. Those are all things that I still struggle with even today. Trying to figure out what that balance looks like. When to engage, when not to engage, and I think that that's partially too what we need to be teaching our youth and our peers. Anthony and I talked last night about our peers and the guys my age, and we're teaching about going back to bullying and just different things, emotional stagnation and not being vulnerable, not being transparent, not being present, is that you have to know when to engage, when not to engage, when to de-escalate, and when to protect yourself. And I think that's what we see um, with the bullies is, of course, we know they're going to pick on people who, again, are unequipped. Uh,
Right.
and so we've got to teach both the person, the victim, and the perpetrator. I
Mm.
think that's a situation where, we need to be figuring out what's triggering the bullying behavior, as well as how to protect those who are being bullied.
Yeah, that's a tough job. I don't envy you that for any teacher. I need to get that book. I need to download it to my iPad. Empath Survivor Guide.
Yes, yeah, it's fantastic, and it goes through some different stages of um, empathic situations, and so I'm sure you'll find them to be very relatable. That there was
Oh,
a
good.
several where I was like, oh yeah, I've been through that. Oh, that's what those people are called. Okay, and so a lot of epiphanies happened, and it was a unique experience. And again, the most uh, value that I got out of it was the tools to learn how to create that space and that buffer zone to where I can empathize with the person without taking on the full brunt of their emotional state.
Yeah, that's what I need to do because I'm just absorb. I'm just a big sponge, and then I don't
Mhm.
know how to deal with it. What I've got inside. So yeah, I got to read that.
Yeah, it's powerful because what I even in talking now, kind of what just hit me was, that's unintentional emotional bullying.
Mm.
When people project so much of themselves
Mm.
that you begin to lose your ability to have your own emotional state.
That
And
makes
so
sense.
it's something that we should all be practicing. I think
Hmm.
it is. We talk about boundaries, and I think people often equate boundaries to physical space, and they equate boundaries to the number of interactions. But I think boundaries are just as important in the metaphysical space sphere. So it's about creating that buffer zone for your energy to have its own unique signature and its own presence without being compromised by someone else's energy.
Yeah, I need to learn that. That'd be great.
It takes practice, but it's doable. But anything takes practice. I think when we talk about trying to change a parent's behavior toward their child, it takes
Oh,
practice. When you talk about a child changing his
mm,
behavior toward a peer, it takes practice. When we talk about a teacher changing their behavior, even in a reactionary sense to how a child is conducting
mm.
themselves, it takes practice.
Oh,
And that's something that I was talking to some friends of mine about, and I can't remember who said this, but practice creates habit and habit creates culture. And so that's something that I try to continue to live by and talk to people about is if you practice something long enough and it becomes habitual, well, then it becomes part of your genetic makeup.
oh, that's good.
It becomes part of who you are. It becomes part of how you operate. And we have to work at that because it does take practice to get to that point.
Hmm. I'd say coming back to the parents of the bullied people, the bullied children. Boy, I wouldn't have been a good parent of somebody that was bullied. I'd have been down at the school all over whoever the teacher was, and
Yeah.
I know that's not right. But back then it was different, when I was in school. But Lord, all these rules and laws and the way they've
Mhm.
changed things, how frustrating it must be for both sides.
It is. It is because it's really hard to get parents to understand the limitations of our abilities.
Mm-hmm.
And it's no fault of their own. Again,
No.
they're trying to protect their children, but we can only do so much. We can only say so many things. We can only discipline in a certain fashion. Um,
Exactly.
and because of certain legislations, No Child Left Behind, although a great idea, I don't particularly agree completely on how it was
Mm-hmm.
executed, but we'll just for what it is we can't expel children for lengths of time because we know they're not going to graduate. And even though
Ah,
it may be an unsafe environment for another student, we have to try and keep that previous student or the former student in class so that they can continue their education.
hmm.
But then there's also that added um, conflict of, well, how disruptive is this situation to not only the victim but the rest of the student body, right? So
Exactly.
then you have so many factors at play,
Mm,
and then so I don't envy, um, I don't envy my administration at all. I love them. They're fantastic men. Mr. Matlock and Mr. Stanford were wonderful people to work with, and they're doing an excellent job with what they can do. I don't
yeah.
envy them one bit, because it's easy for the teacher to be like, man, I don't want him in my class anymore. It's
Yeah.
easy for the parent to be like, keep that kid away from my
Mm-hmm.
kid. But when you have that happening in multiple instances in multiple classrooms, and then at an even higher level across multiple schools, it becomes much more complex and a much harder task to try and get your hands on.
That's true. If it'd been me, if I'd been the parent, I'd say, give me a name. I want the name of the kid that
Yeah,
bullied my son or something.
I'm gonna go see their parents right now.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Name, address, and of course you can't do that. But that's I'd say that's the knee jerk reaction because it's just out of love and Lord, people couldn't. I can't stand children being bullied to anybody now, and but I understand that with the legislation the way it is, and you can't
And
just jerk a knot in them anymore.
I love that term, by the way. My mom still says that to this day. I had to have that conversation with my son not too long ago. Well, and my
Oh,
daughter as well. We had to have those conversations, because of where they live,
hmm,
and then being biracial. There were some instances of racial injustice and bullying by their peers, and it was unfortunate. But we
hmm,
had to have the conversation about protecting yourself while not becoming the aggressor.
right.
And in several instances, I had to talk to my kids about not becoming bullies because they have been subjected to bullying themselves, and to
Mhm.
take that understanding and what that experience did to them and make sure they don't repeat it. And I think that's where, not tooting my own horn, but after seeing so many kids who repeat the cycle, it is up to us parents to engage our children to make sure they understand how not to go in that direction and why not to go in that direction. And I think if we relate it to the pain that they suffered, as it um, is not so much as it is an injustice, but the pain that they suffered, as not to make someone else feel that pain, as opposed to so many parents that I have seen want to have this retribution and this vindictive sort of mentality where, oh, you've been
Mhm.
hurt, so toughen up and go out here and I don't want to say they advocate hurting people, but they don't advocate and
Mm.
caring for them, if you
Yeah,
will.
I'd say they do. I can say it. I'd say,
You can say it.
yeah, you
I
can.
like to go on record saying that.
I
Uh,
can say, honey,
but
I know they do because I remember.
yeah,
But
yeah, and that's
yeah,
unfortunate. That's
and
unfortunate. But
children are just all feelings, and at that age, I don't know your
they are.
children's age, but they don't understand all that. At a certain age, they just feel and know that they're hurt and why
Hmm.
did this happen, and I don't understand. And to me, I don't see a skin color, so I don't understand that. I saw it a lot, through my years of work, but I never have understood that.
Well, and middle school is such a delicate age because it's a transitional period, and
Mm,
and I think people don't put enough value on what we need to be teaching kids at that age, because they're dealing with literally growing up. Okay, their
yeah.
bodies are changing. You've got hormones beginning to have a factor. You've
Hmm.
got social interaction becoming a factor. They're
Oh
beginning
yeah.
to figure out their cliques and their social spheres of influence, and then
Yeah, I
you've
hate
got
that word
them.
clicks. Ugh,
It's
go
that
ahead.
we're
Sorry.
still there. Um,
Yeah, that's a shame.
and then on top of that, there's the expectation of behavior, there's expectation of grades, there's expectation of beginning to think about your future, because now you're getting ready to go into high school. Now, once you
Hmm.
leave high school, it's, for a long time, it was college or bust. We're seeing that
Hmm.
there's more vocational things out there now. However, it's still the mental taxation of having to be considering your future when you're still trying to figure out who you are right now.
Hmm.
And so there's a lot going on at that age that people don't take into account, I don't believe.
That's
As
true.
obviously as educators, we see that all the time working at that age group. But I think people outside of the educational platform or human services platform don't realize how much is going on simultaneously with this age group of children. And so it really behooves us to start being more attentive to their emotional needs, as well as their educational ones.
That's true. And there's so much more information out there now that they're privy to, that I didn't have growing up. There wasn't any computers or cell phones. We just knew what we knew in school and what we had at home. And we just had like two channels and then three on TV. But it's true. But now, Lord, there's like an information overload
There is,
that
and
they're
there's
exposed to.
information. And now we're in an age where if you've got 20 million subscribers, you're an expert.
Hmm.
And it's like, no, you're not really an expert. People just like to listen to you. Like
Yeah,
let's,
exactly.
let's make sure you're giving the right information. Let's make sure,
Exactly.
when you have that ability and that influence and that level of charisma, you have a responsibility to do the right thing, and a lot of people don't do that. And I think that's kind of bringing our conversation full circle. That's part of what we're seeing is that you have people not doing the right thing,
Hmm.
and then because of that, you have this trickle down effect of people just doing what they know because they don't know any different.
Yeah, that's true. It's what they're taught at home, and
Hmm.
it's a shame.
It is, and but we have the ability and we have the opportunity to fix it. We have the opportunity to make it better. We just have to take the responsibility to do so, and
And
we
the
have
time.
we have to talk about being intentional, and that's something that we need to be intentional about in our homes and in our communities, is being intentional about raising up this next generation, because the reality is, as we live in this chronological state, we are going to pass away at some point, and they're going to
Hmm.
be the future, and they're going
Right.
and at some point that future will be the present. So what kind of present are they going to be able to have? And we have
Yeah.
to be thinking that far ahead for them to help them get there.
True. That's just mind blowing. It's true, but it's mind blowing, especially this day and age, honey. We've got such a big hurdle right now to get over
Hmm.
in the country, and I don't know how it's affecting y'all. I know you're in the U.S. Virgin Islands. I don't know how it's affecting y'all politically, but we won't get into that. But it's really something huge here, and to think about the future and what they might be facing. So we've got to get that fixed here.
Absolutely, absolutely, and the
Yeah.
time is now. The time, and the time is always now. I think that people don't have that in the forefront of their minds. The time is always now. Now you might not be ready,
Mm,
and that's a different scenario. But the time is always now to make a stand. The time is always now to do what's right. The time is
right.
always now to be able to lend a helping hand, to be able to lift someone up, to be able to help them make better choices, to be able to influence them to do something positive. That time is always now, and you always
Yeah.
have right now to do that.
That's true. That is true. That's a very good point, honey. Because with the censorship of Facebook and YouTube now, I've already got one strike against me on YouTube for something I put up. It was the truth, but it had something they didn't like, and I think YouTube and Facebook are on their way out. Just between me and you, what I've heard and stuff, different digital warriors that I watch. So I think they're going to be replaced eventually. But
Uh,
sometimes it's hard to put forth your heart and what, because they don't want to hear things, so they just censor you.
Well, I mean, and that's what we have there. You have digital bullying. I mean, that's
Mm-hmm.
cyberbullying on a huge scale to is to censor people from being
Mm-hmm.
genuine and to keep them from being able to share their testimony and share their love, and that's just another level of bullying that we're having to contend with.
Yeah, that's true. Unbelievable. It just I laugh because I don't know what else to do. Well, I pray all the time, of course, about stuff. I know you do, but this is just they're saying it's a wonderful time to be alive, and I do have faith that it's going to turn out that way. and the Lord is going to have to move in a big way to fix this and get rid of the evil Luciferian powers that's influencing so many people right now. The Lord is going to have to do it, and we'll do our part,
Mhm.
but it's going to take an intervention, divine intervention.
Yes, most definitely. And all we
Yeah,
can do, like you said, is continue to pray, continue to do the most good we can everywhere we can when we can.
yeah, yeah. That's true. Well, can you think of anything else you want to talk about, darling?
And I think that's a lot of information for people. I hope that whoever gets to watch this going forward will find value in what we've talked about today, and hopefully have some things to go back and be thinking about to apply in their own homes, in their own communities.
Yeah, me too. It's so different now, but I've really enjoyed it, honey, and
Thank you again for having me. For sure,
no,
I enjoy
I
it.
I always appreciate it, and we'll try again for next week, whatever day
Okay,
is good for you, darling. And I've got a couple of appointments, but we'll work it out. So
okay,
you let me know what's good for you. But
I will.
I love you, and God bless you.
All
And
right, I love you, and God bless you, and take care, everybody. And as always, let's change the way that we think, so we can change the way that we live. And until next time, you guys stay blessed.
all right, that's wonderful. All right, bye bye, everybody. God bless.